Hey everyone, welcome. This is a tough one tonight. It is, yeah. It's been a lot of shit going around, a lot of drama, right? And I don't want to be fueling it for Karen Reed, for Aiden Carney, and for the guests we're gonna have on tonight. So, pretty much all I'm gonna say. I hope. I feel like maybe I should say a little more. I feel like I don't have to defend myself against some of the words that were used against me because I know who I am, and I know a lot of my friends and family, and especially people from Boston know who I am, especially based on my record, my journalism when I print publication for almost a decade, and how I started with Chris Ferrone. I wrote a blog about Chris back in the day, basically going after him when he was a Phoenix reporter. And then he became my boss at Dig Boston. And even before that, I had written a story, like basically a blog, about him ripping apart something he did. And the way he came back from that and responded, I was like, this is he's amazing. That dude, I love Chris Ferrone. And so basically, the first interaction I had with him was going after him. And after that, we became best of friends. And he was like my mentor, my editor for like so many years. He's like a real journalist, like Columbia School. Look him up. He's been on the show. He was just on the show recently. So for me, moments like this, sometimes it's like, it's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And like Will, he doesn't need to even apologize to me. And the fact that Karen Reed wanted him at that event speaks to me about how important he is to the movement. And the fact that Aiden. So for me, like, I'm not fueling it. I posted some comments. He snipped at me. It is what it is, but I feel like I understand where he's coming from. I think he kind of misconstrued the situation a little too much. And I'm not saying I was perfect in the whole situation either. And I kind of have some regrets in our relationship too, actually. And so like, I think he thought he was doing the right thing. And all of this was like last minute shit that us creators all deal with. So in the end, I think all of us should just get a pass. And I think the infighting, even for other people who are Twitter creators and other, YouTube shows and comedians, I think we just need all a breather. Like the best show today, I love the Altman show with Auntie Deb. That felt good today. That made me feel good. Yeah. So I'm excited. We're going to be doing a best of 2024. The best guest. You guys going to decide who wins best guest. We're actually going to have an award show coming up after Christmas. I had the best year this year with you guys. I really did. Like, so for me, that's been like mixed emotions, especially with what Aiden and I went through last year around this time, his birthday, and how good it is right now in a way, even though we're still under. Let's keep it together. Let's just try to keep it together as much as we can. So I'm going to bring up this guest. This is what I want it to be about, too. I don't want it to be about the creators fighting anymore. I want peace and love. I do. I really do. Even for the Glera, too. So and again, who's it about? Karen Reed, Aiden Carney. That's why. And who's it about? Maur Stringer. I think I lost her. Oh, man, I lost her. Damn, I got to get her back up. Maybe I had her. There she is. It's about these victims. That's why I get so fired up about the Grant Smith. I don't even want to have to cover him because I'm a victim of him. I shouldn't even have to be the host of the show, but I'm the guy that has to do this because I know how to do it. I know how the details. I know the history. He started out on my show, Grant Smith Ellis. He was a caller on my show, became a guest on my show, became my he was my, the guy. I brought him into this shit. So for me, there's kind of a responsibility to cover what he's doing, especially when it's harmful and what I call dangerous. And there's victims, and we're going to bring them up over the next few weeks on this show to discuss some of the things that he's done. And we have, I believe we have a family that's been victimized here. The mother and the wife, her name's Cynthia. And you saw Maur. I replayed it the other night. This guy's been through hell. They pulled a braid out of his head. I believe still facing criminal charges. And all they wanted to do was do a legal business. All they wanted to do was to do the thing that they said they were going to do when they made it legal. So, and I got to say, with Cynthia and Maur, I was part of the problem back in the day because I fell for Grant. That's why I was a victim. I thought he was legit. And I didn't support them when I should have. But we are now. So here is Cynthia, the wife of Maur. How you doing?
Hey, Mike, thank you so much. I'm doing great. I appreciate your introduction and your commentary there. I appreciate this conversation because it's an opportunity for myself, for my family, and for others like us who have been victims to give voice to what's been happening to us and to let folks know. The only reason why it continues to happen is because no one is stopping this. No one has checked this. And, you actually made a great point in stating that this didn't just start this year or with the incident where my husband was attacked. This started years ago. We can go back 5-6 years ago when our industry in Massachusetts had just kicked off. And as you shared, my husband and I came here to start business in this legal industry. And in doing so, there were some things that we saw happening. Legislation said that we can have equity businesses, and those were the ones to have priority. Equity businesses went to the citizens of Massachusetts, particularly those who have been harmed by the war on drugs. And so that applies to everyone in the state of Massachusetts that was impacted by this. And instead, what we saw happening was our industry was lifted up and put in the pockets of MSOs, multi-state operators, well-capitalized folks. And when we called that out, my husband and I, when we put that information out there and say, hey, hold on a second, this is what the legislation said, and this is what's happening, we started to get attacked. The first thing, you shared with everyone that, yes, I'm a mother. I have 4 beautiful children. But my background is in policy, programming, education, and that's the work that I do. And I've done it across various sectors, from education to here, to agriculture, to here in the cannabis industry. And that was the information that I brought. I took that skill set and I brought it here, and I put together the Massachusetts Marijuana Social Equity Report, which was the first report. It's an independent white paper. It's something that wasn't funded by anyone else, but I put that together, highlighting, hey, these are the things, these are some 10 observations that we see happening here in our industry. Our industry was about 2 years old at that time. And these are some ways that we can make changes to ensure that we don't lose this industry, to make sure that people who are supposed to be benefiting from this opportunity are the ones that are benefiting. And immediately we were attacked. We were attacked by Grant, and
by the person that said they were representing your interests, right? Basically.
And that was the thing. That was the odd part, was that he presented himself as the face of social justice, social equity. He juxtaposed himself with the social justice chair at the time, who was Commissioner Shailene Title, and he presented himself as the voice for the community. And as I sat from someone who's been in government positions. I worked at worked at a state agency here in Massachusetts. And the things that he was saying in terms of the limitations of the state and what was actually happening weren't true. They weren't accurate. One of the things that I'm a big proponent of is solutions. And that's when we had put forth the PIES program. This was a solution when we called out this issue, right? When we said, hey, wait a minute, there is a handful of folks, we identified them as the Colorado Six, who wrote on our legislation, came in and has benefited from the opening up of the industry, took the first movers advantage that should have been set aside for Massachusetts citizens and those in the equity program. We called all that out, but we also came to the table with a solution, said, okay, hey, you guys have over 200 control of over 200 plus licenses. There's still something that we can do to make sure that people who were in the economic empowerment program or who were in the social equity program and other Massachusetts citizens, you talk about our small businesses, the micros, et cetera, who wanted to come into this industry, have an opportunity to do so. So that was the PIES program that we designed and we put forth. The CAB actually presented it, the Cannabis Advisory Board presented it to the CCC as a viable solution to get businesses into the industry and still have a chance at that first mover's advantage, because no one else was offering any solutions as to how do we make sure businesses who aren't well capitalized come into this industry. And so those who have been here since that time, they know that voices like Grant and the folks who were with him, he was the one that people would go to for information, particularly because he posted the CCC meetings. I'm not quite sure what other value folks saw aside from just being this conduit of information. And because he was the conduit, the way he interpreted that information, people assumed, I presume, that it was truthful or that it was law even. And we challenged that flat out and said, hey, there are other solutions. And when we asked, well, what solution do you have, Grant, for ensuring that equity businesses are able to operate in Massachusetts, to giving back to the citizens of Massachusetts what was taken from them? And the solution was to wait. That was the solution, to wait. There was no real solution outside of his commentary. And then that's when the lies began, because then he started saying things like, we were backed by big businesses, we were backed by MSOs, when in fact we had no backing. We were a couple who saw a need. We saw other people who were in the same position as us wanting to enter into this industry, and the way that the regulations were being rolled out and what was being communicated by their grassroots team that they had put together and I'm talking about MRCC. These are groups that are spinoffs from other international groups, if you will. They're not actually Massachusetts based, because Massachusetts had a history before them. But these groups who had taken the forefront have now become the voice of what equity should be and what the citizens should be receiving. And we push back on that. And instead of folks starting to question and say, hold on a second, what actually would serve the people best? Instead, what happened was we were attacked, and Grant led that charge in attacks. He went on several folks' shows. He used his own platform. And as you shared, everyone got behind him because they just blindly trusted what he was saying, despite the fact that what he was saying was not backed by legislation, was not backed by regulation, was not backed by anything that would actually support and move the needle forward when we talked about having representation and participation across the board, and not just those who were well capitalized in the industry.
So we use the word, I use the word to explain Grant, dangerous. When we were talking backstage, you used that word.
Before I even heard you say that word. And the reason why is because I gave this whole background talking about what we did and our interaction with Grant, which was predominantly online, right? So he's hopping from one lie to the other. And all we can do is put the information out there, put the receipts on our on various platforms for people who will take the time and digest the information themselves to figure out what the truth is and what options really exist. And what has since evolved was a physical attack, and not just a physical attack, a paid hit. You know, we went from him lying and jumping from one lie saying that we were backed by big operators or big money when we weren't, to another lie saying that we were pushing predatory deals when in fact the pies program explicitly stated that it was 100% ownership. So the complete opposite of what he was saying, which is that's his MO. um, just lies of omission, lies of conflation, lies of manipulation. And then it manifested itself and progressed to physical attack, where he used his gang. And I use the words that he used. You can go back and he says, you know, hey, let's round up the gang again. So he used his gang, he mobilized his folks to attack my husband, and they paid someone to attack me. I just happened to not have been there when my husband was there. He was actually walking with another well-esteemed person in the industry when this happened. So when we talk about dangerous, we're talking about someone who is not only is he unhinged and unbridled in his proliferation of lies and machinations, but he's also supported, right? Because he would not be able to get as far with the lies that he's told in terms of the attacks if he didn't have people in powerful positions and people, even the common folks, supporting him, giving him an ear and a platform to speak and continue to present misinformation, to present lies that are detrimental to people. And then also, here it is in the courts. He is connected all throughout the courts. If you know anything about him, he's a student at New England Law, which is where his mother graduated from. And everything that we have dealt with the lies wrapped around since that incident, New England Law is involved. New England Law supported the nonprofit that the Jean-Jacques brothers, who are the ones who attacked my husband, that they founded. They are at every juncture, and Grant is the common cog, if you will, in all of this. And it continues. This is something that's been playing out for years. This is not something that happened, in the last 72 hours or happened at the beginning of this year. And we're in we just entered some type of trial type of thing. No, these are lies that he told. And when his lies were not effective, because his goal is to control people, when his lies were not effective, you're not going to silence me. I know what I'm talking about when I say there are other options for the regulatory body. I know what I'm saying when I say that our industry was stolen and there's still an opportunity to make it right. You can't silence people who want to see justice, right? And so he's resorted to physical violence. And that's when we talk about someone that's dangerous, he's dangerous physically, through his connections. And as I said, the people who enable him, whether it's his mother, whether it's other political figures, whether it's other people who have platforms, media platforms, these folks who he taps into behind the scenes, and then they continue to push whatever his personal vendetta is without verifying, without checking what it is that's being put forth. That's dangerous. And
Yeah.
we're experiencing that. That's what my family is going through right now. And other folks are getting wind of it. There are other people who've experienced their own trauma. And, I'm happy to hear that you're going to give them, some folks will have the opportunity to share their experience. And why is it important? One, so that people know that this is not an isolated incident.
Yeah, this is over and over again. This is that's why we can have a bunch of women are going to be on here, a panel of them actually after the new year. But it's interesting too, because you got this shirt on, which is receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots. And with this story, with what happened at New England Cannabis Convention, at the Heinz Convention Center, with your husband and these men who surrounded him, I originally got wind of it, and I immediately talked to the person who runs the event, because I know them. I know them very well, and I know them through my media connections, because those are the guys who used to publish the paper I was just talking about, Dig Boston, that I wrote for. So those are my dudes. And so they told me the real story. They told me right away that there was video, but they couldn't release it. They were trying to get a copy of it. and they told me what happened. And from then I knew immediately that what you were saying was the truth. And I already kind of obviously believed that going against Grant. So the receipts, when the video finally came out, it was totally different what Grant had been saying about the incident. And your husband got arrested at this event. And so when the video comes out, when you finally get to see the video,
jump in. He didn't get arrested at the event. And
yeah,
so
he got arrested later, right? Or
he,
charged.
he was charged. And
Yeah.
those details do matter because the responding officers saw the same videos, right?
Yeah.
The details do matter in understanding that. And when you read the reports, Grant pushed for pushed his narrative, and when you read the reports, he was deemed informative and helpful, and he wasn't there. This is what dangerous means, right? Because people are relying on his word, and then he leans into issues that he claims that he has, but when you realize it's other people around him that has those issues, and he kind of absorbs that identity, and he leans into this to say that he is someone who has certain handicaps or disabilities, and because of that, you should acquiesce to him, right? He doesn't have receipts. He doesn't have proof. He doesn't come with evidence to substantiate the things that he says, and it doesn't take rocket science to see in one instance he says one thing, and then you look at a video or you look at the original post perhaps that he is taking information from, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what that says.
That's not what the video
That's
shows.
not what that shows, Grant. That's not what that's talking
That's
about.
not what the video shows. And then there was a police report that came out, and he basically lied to them again. He told the police that your husband said he was going to go get a gun and come back, right?
Yes, he said that to the police. I'm not quite sure if that's on the that is on the police report, because the police did interrogate him further. Like, wait, are you sure you heard that? And he changed mid-sentence. And so accountability is something that is really important when you talk about truth, when you talk about justice, when you talk about correcting wrongs and making sure that justice happens. And there's no accountability when it comes to Grant. There has been none. He has not been held accountable for the lies that he told from day one. There was a platform that he was given, and he was asked about the lie that he said against me and against the report and against the PIES program and those things. And he said, oh, well, someone else had told me that. And that was it. No apology, no correction, no accountability for the misinformation that he puts out there. And that misinformation can be dangerous when you give it to the police. That misinformation is dangerous when you give it to a bunch of, and you mobilize criminals to take action on that.
That's what's going on. And so your husband is still being charged, right?
Yes, we're still in court. His ties and connections to the court are deep. I mentioned New England law. If anyone pays any bit of attention to the court information, go on the court docket. New England law is all throughout. Now, Massachusetts has several law schools. Why New England law is on at every juncture, from the clerk magistrate to the judges, to the DA, the assistant DA working under Kevin Hayden. It's not Kevin Hayden, obviously, but the ADA that's on here, to the public defender that was originally appointed. And he was unresponsive. If we had to rely on him, we would have missed the court date. There was information we were asking him for. He was just not providing. All of this, it ties together, and it raises some serious questions as to, wow, how many folks is he in their ear, and what impact does this have? This is something that it's impacting us, and how is this affecting other people? And when I say other people, the last time I spoke on my own platform, where I talked about the individuals who attacked my husband, but in particular, I talked about one of them facing charges and the impact with this child, and the fact that the charges are not matching what the receipts and the evidence that the Massachusetts court system has. They, originally it was trafficking charges, and they dropped them down to aggravated or violent rape charges. And again, when you look at this, I see the same people in these same circles, and this is why I say this is dangerous. And you know, it's really disturbing that these people will take up a personal vendetta. Grant has made it clear that he does not like my husband. He's made it clear that he does not like what we were putting out there. He did not want that information. Why? Because he wasn't behind it. It removes him as the face of social justice or social equity or what have you in Massachusetts. It highlights the fact that, hey, he is not the source or the only source for information. And in fact, if you want information on ways to do something, he doesn't have solutions for that, right? So all of those things fed into his personal vendetta, and he has been able to leverage the networks that he has, that his mother has, to exact his vendetta against my family.
Yeah. Just for people that don't know, I think we've played the video enough times on the show, but for new people, maybe haven't seen it, the video shows your husband walking in with an attorney.
Yes.
She's a female attorney. And they're walking in, and someone calls Maur's name, and he stops because he's like, "Oh, who's calling me?" And he stops and waits, and they walk up on him, and there's a number of men, and you can almost see like a lookout, and then there's basically like 2 to 3 men attack your husband, and then they charge your husband with the crime, and those other guys are really bad guys. Like at least one of them he's now up for.
You don't have to say
the child rape charges. I mean, and the video shows that they encircled your husband. They approached your husband. They were the ones that initiated force. Like to me, it's just unbelievable that they just picked and they'll go forward, even though there's video. I don't get how they can, continue this, It just.
And this is something that everyone should be asking. Well, how is that they can continue this? And, just to let you know, one of the things, because those not only did they charge my husband with this, but they also listed those 2 gentlemen as victims. And in doing so, we've since learned that these victims have records. These records.
Yeah, they got a history. They look like they could be CIs, like criminal CIs who get in trouble and they snitch on people, and they get in trouble and they snitch on people. That's what it looks like to me. I can't say that officially because I don't know, but geez, doesn't it look like that? Doesn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, the records are, they were sealed records, and in these sealed records, because they are victims in this case, it's since come out that they have multiple assault and battery charges with attempt to kill.
Gun charges, the child shit. I mean, that should be.
That's current right now.
Those are the witnesses against you. I mean, this is what we're talking about. It's like
these are the people that Massachusetts is giving victims protections to.
And then I get threatened by, for me covering this, I want people to know this too. Like I get threats from them, obviously, like they don't even have to say anything because obviously look who these people are. And if I say shit too, if we talk about this on the show, you too, all of us, any of us, and they've tried this before on you. I think Maur won this, the witness intimidation shit.
Yes.
These people are now, it's like crazy how we're bound. We're bound.
Well, that's the goal, right? To silence and silence the real victims, right? And to try and keep folks in a specific place, to control them. And because that's not happening, they're pushing this. They're trying to push it further. They try to bring more to court on multiple witness intimidation charges. They also have assault on police officer charges as well, which is mind-blowing to hear all of these violent charges tied to these men. And yet they're the ones getting victims protection. And we've gone to the court and say, hey, look, not only are they the ones who actually assaulted my husband, but they were paid to do this. And they went on and paid someone else to attack me. So I leave my house every day and I don't know what what I could potentially face. And I think we've shared with you that Grant has come to my home. I live on the South Shore. Grant lives on the North Shore. And he was in front of my house. And when we tried to call the police, we couldn't get a police report for this. And I have to say something. I have to say something. And again, appreciate this opportunity to share this so that, because there are a lot of people in this industry, some who may have spoken out against how Grant has lied on government documents, some who have spoken out and shared how they have been misled and abused by Grant. However, I don't want folks to think that because you don't hear us as active online as before, that this has just gone away. It has not gone away.
Continued.
It's
Yeah.
continued. It's escalated. We've been in court now for going on 2 years. So, the costs and obligations with that continue. It hasn't stopped. And Grant he said at one point that he would not stop. So if he says that and other folks continue to step aside and say, hey, well, not my issue, he's not going to stop.
We have a Mass State rep that came on like maybe about a week or two ago, recently. And he's the reason he came on, he's a Republican, actually. He supports this. They're coming up with some bills. Number one, for journalists to protect them more, and also to change the witness intimidation law. So it's not like the way it is now, where you can just kind of frivolously go after people. I imagine you'd be interested in talking to him and supporting what he's doing.
I'm always interested in policy, absolutely. And I will have to say, I want to highlight what happened with the witness intimidation piece. It was brought to a court where the judge was not from New England law. Let's start there. And the judge looked at it and was like, what is this? Where is the witness intimidation? And so this is why I say there's a danger, particularly with Grant, because of the connections that he has in certain courts with certain people, including folks who are policymakers, folks who are in other positions of power, the police, et cetera. And so depending on where you land, that will dictate how far that goes. And yes, it was costly. We had to drive out to this was the Fitchburg courts. We had to go out there several times. We had an attorney out there as well. And we had to make sure that the dates didn't conflict with the dates here in Massachusetts, which they tried to intentionally to set my husband up. When I say they, the Jean-Jacques brothers, they tried to have him have to show up in court in Boston and then also in Fitchburg on the same day. However, it just happened that they did it back-to-back days. And when we ended up in Fitchburg, the judge was just like, after several court dates, he was like, explain to me what was the witness intimidation? This is information that he is sharing. And the information, he never once threatened anyone. Again, find where he's threatened anyone. He's presented exactly what happened and he shared it just like we're sharing here. My husband's not going to sit silent when he's being attacked, when he's being assaulted. You saw how he handled them. He's not going to sit by and let, someone throw him over a second floor balcony, which is what they were trying to do, And so when the judge looked at the letter of the law, which said, there are certain things that have to be met, there was no threat. He never threatened any of them. He presented his information. In fact, Grant is the one who has exercised witness intimidation throughout this whole entire time. From the moment that this case started to happen, anyone who questioned him, he challenged them in a way that made people scared. And they rightfully should be scared.
Absolutely.
So that attorney that you mentioned, she was scared to come to Massachusetts to participate in the Freedom Rally because of Grant.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I stopped going to the events. I don't want to see that dude. He's trouble. He's
got
like we said, he's dangerous.
And he has a gang of folks that he's paid and that he has established a rapport with, that are willing to do things that are not just are not. I mean, he has his reputation. If you paid attention to it, he's the nefarious one, but he likes to use that to describe other folks.
How they project, how they always project what they are. It's unbelievable. He is the, I don't know. It's just he really. We had to bring you on tonight. Like, how has this affected your family? Because like you talked about being a mom, you have kids. I see you and Mar, are just like, I've watched your videos. I watched your yoga video, and I was just like, oh my god, like you guys have each other, but this had to be tough. So tell us about your family and what it's meant to you, because that yoga video had me like I had tears. That was like such a great. You do some good videos together. Saw that on Mara's Facebook. I don't know when you did that. It's probably a while ago, was it?
It was a while ago, the ones that were posted, but our family, we that's what we do. We how this has affected us. I shared a little bit in terms of when I go out, I'm very concerned. When I step out of the house, I don't know who I may bump into. As I shared with you, and just to give information, perhaps as to the person actually saw the woman being paid to assault me. That was the conversation. That was the goal, to attack me. And so I'm not quite sure if my husband can be attacked in a government building with all of those cameras, all of those people witnessing, and yet he's the one that has been in the courts for the last 2 years. That's very concerning. The word, I think you used the word trauma to describe this, and there it is traumatic to sit there in the courts, to sit in and look at how this is playing out, and be astonished at the number of people. And there are a lot of people who know. Mike,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who know. They know that Grant is lying. They know that he's leveraging his mother's connections and his connections and wielding it in a way that is unjust and goes against everything that anyone who is for, particularly when we talk about the cannabis industry, right? We're talking about righting the wrongs of the war on drugs. It goes against all of that. And for that to be the way that Grant is navigating and using his network to exact his personal beef, I wouldn't even say it's a beef because it's definitely one-sided. We were concerned about Grant so far as he was speaking about regulations and policy. Other than that, and everyone are entitled to their opinion. You just shared you had a Republican on your platform. I think in the past you usually tend to have Democrats, perhaps a balance of both, but people are entitled to having their difference of opinions, their difference of solutions, their insight into why certain things should be the way they are. But that the result, when it doesn't go your way or someone doesn't acquiesce to you, should not be violence. And unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with right now.
Absolutely. Definitely. It's a lot. This is a big question. I keep seeing it coming up in the chat. I'm sorry that I haven't been more active in the chat tonight, but I'm just like the chat. We're just glued to Cynthia every word and just want to listen tonight. And I know you've already kind of said this at least once, but I want to hear more. Like, is there anything? What can people do? Because that's the question tonight. People want to know, how can they help you and your husband right now?
So appreciate the ask, and I think there are several things, right? So what can people do? For one, speak out, continue to speak out. I see a lot more folks are coming out and sharing their story. Specifically for us, one of the things that we have been, our obligations legally continued. I think you had shared back when we were looking to retain an actual attorney because we saw what was happening with the public public appointed attorney, that we have I think it's called a spot fund.
Oh, you do have a fund.
I think it's spotfund.com. I can get that information to you.
I want to get it now if I can, even tonight. That would be awesome. Yeah. Before we end the show.
Yeah, because the obligations continued, and that spot fund has been up for some time. We ended up having to sell our vehicles to make sure that we could fully retain the attorney. But because this has continued on, the obligations have continued on. I think if there's an opportunity for folks to continue to share that when you're in circles, and there are people who cross paths.
Well, I just found it. I found it. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this in the chat tonight. If people want to, in the chat, this is what I want people to do too. Like, obviously, freekarenreed.net. This is why we got. I saw Mazza tonight doing his Christmas movie. That was good today. Fundraising for Karen Reed. Nurse Kim last night. Fundraising for Free Karen Reed. FreeKarenReed.net. There's also the Turtle Boy Defense Fund. And tonight, this is about Maur. We're pinning Spot Fund. It's going to be in the chat right now in a second. And I'm going to pin it at the top of the YouTube. If you could make a donation. I think I already did, but I'm going to make another donation, definitely. And
I appreciate that, Mike. And I just want to highlight, you mentioned the Free Karen Reed or Karen Reed situation, and you mentioned also the other man, Turtle Boy,
Aiden Carney.
One of the things that we're seeing is a habit, right? Because interestingly enough, there is a common thread here with our conversation tonight with Grant, and there is a habit of spreading misinformation and, in some instances, gaslighting people, in other instances, flat out lying, and those having dangerous ramifications. And the people who are involved in positions of power, whether that is the police, whether that is the courts, these folks continue to listen to Grant, or perhaps even give him the space and platform which validates him in the eyes of others, when in fact that's a very dangerous thing to do. In the end, it'll backfire on those who do that. Without fail, it will. When we pointed out to the Cannabis Control Commission the issue that we saw with them giving platforms to Grant and acquiescing to him as their spokesperson, when in fact they are a government agency and should have their own to reach the community. Now, fast forward, we see how that has backfired for the agency itself, right? He himself has put out information and twisted information coming from the CCC. So whether you're an individual, whether you're an organization, whether you're a state agency, it's very dangerous to give him a platform to lend ear or to validate what he says, because it will come back to bite you. And in some instances, it hurts people who weren't even involved. My children are impacted by this because they see the stress and the impact that it has on their mother, on their father. They know that, their dad has to go to court. Why? Because Grant is the reporter and the witness, and he has shown up at court. I don't know if you saw this, Mike. I'm sure you saw this, where we are walking out of the courthouse and Grant is accosting us outside of the courthouse.
Unbelievable. I mean, this is the stuff he does.
This is a habit. And then he has a gang of folks who also have a habit of being violent physically. And my family were experiencing this on both sides.
Yeah, we saw him, we saw Grant do this stuff with Jessica Machado, another woman who has a restraining order against him. So he's kind of got kicked out of the Karen Reed trial the first time, but it looks like it's going to be expired. So he's going to be around more too, around this circus, which is going to be the second Karen Reed trial and probably the Turtle Boy trial too. So
I think
it's going to get wild. And that's why I think we need to make sure people are aware. Cynthia, I want to ask you this too, because I think you've mentioned this tonight, but I just like to repeat and drill down more, especially on this stuff, which is, I know a lot of people in the cannabis space that have had bad interactions with Grant, like terrible, and they won't speak out, or they have spoken out, but they're not going to speak out again. What would your advice be to people who, whether they're new people in the Karen Reed movement, because it's happened with them too, what would your advice be of kind of like the victims of Grant? What would you tell them?
Well, to be silent is to enable him. To be silent is to enable him and to support it. Because at some point, if you have everyone who has been a victim of his actions speaking out, the first of all, 6 degrees of separation, everyone is connected to someone. So yes, he has a network of police officers, but guess what? Everyone else, there are people who are listening now. There are people who are victims of them. They have connections as well to the courts. They have connections to attorneys. They have connections to legislators. They have connections to the city of Boston, where a lot of this is taking place. When we look at, the money that's gone to support this, when I say this, I mean support the nonprofit where, Grant mobilized his goons, if you will, to attack my husband, right? There's money that's being funneled through the state. And if people who are victims, you don't have to always perhaps come out on social media platforms, but you definitely can speak up in the courts. You definitely can speak up in your network, in your spaces. You definitely can reach out behind the scenes to people and say, hey, I'm not sure I'm comfortable being in front of a camera or being on a social media platform, but I do want to support and I do want to make sure that where there's an opportunity to let those decision makers hear the voices of multiple victims in unison saying, hey, this has to stop. Massachusetts, the city of Boston, Norfolk County, Suffolk County, we do not condone this. The citizens do not accept, we do not want to be victims of one unhinged man for whatever reason, because he knows, that's, we elected you. We pay your salaries. How am I paying you to allow someone else to attack me and misuse and abuse the system? So don't be silent. There are ways that you can speak up, you can reach out and just ask, hey, I'm not comfortable being on the forefront. I am so scared that, I say in the one breath, I say, yes, I am afraid when I leave out the house. I'm concerned, but at the same time, I am going to live my life and I'm going to speak out, because if I am silent, then that will give room for him to exact his actions without any impunity whatsoever. At least I am here speaking up, and that's what I encourage others to do, and call him out. I think what folks have been threatened by him behind the scenes, perhaps with, again, this is a form of intimidation that he uses, right? Oh, he will come out and share certain things. Well, there are avenues that you can reach out to the people who are speaking up and saying, hey, perhaps you can go off record, perhaps you can speak off the record, but provide information to further substantiate the things that are being said.
Exactly. It's interesting too. For this show, we've had a lot of politicians on the show, and people running for office, and some of them winning for the first. That happened a lot actually. People running for the first or second time, and then winning, like for the very first win they ever actually got running for office on the show. And like one of them was Maura Dolan. He was sending her all kinds of messages when she booked the interview on the show, like harassing her. Basically, I saw it. Diana DiZoglio too, when she came on the show. Like, this is what Grant does. He will just, it's. I mean, that stuff's minor, basically. I mean, that's whatever. But that's just the type of person he really is. But he takes it even way further in the stuff that we're talking about with you tonight, Cynthia.
Right. And if it stayed online, then fine, right?
Yeah.
They're words that are being thrown around, and for some folks those words perhaps have greater impact, but it's gotten physical, and that is unacceptable. You shared with Jess Machado, I believe she actually was
with a woman
assaulted.
I mean, how the hell did you do that to a woman?
Assaulted. Yeah. So when you talk about getting physical, when you talk about harming people, and yet he purports online to protect and be for those who are not, I forgot the words that he uses, but the voiceless, if you will, or other victims. When you are creating victims, Grant creates victims. He attacks, and if you do not acquiesce to him, you will fall into line and be the next victim. The extent to which he'll go after you, that's his decision. However, I think it's time for people to speak up. And again, speaking up doesn't always have to be online. You can reach out to people behind the scenes and say, hey, look, this is what's been going on, and come together and address that. At some point, he's going to have to be addressed. The people in his circle are going to have to say, hey, look, if Grant won't control himself, the people in his circle are going to have to step in and say, Grant, this is unacceptable. Not when you have dozens of people, bemoaning the issues that you are how you are attacking them online, how you're attacking them in person. Their livelihoods are being impacted. They aren't able to go to work. He's trying to call people's jobs. Why? Because he doesn't have one. And so no one can do the same thing to him. It's really disturbing. It's disgusting, and it's dangerous.
Totally is. One of my last questions here is, we did discuss there's going to be a group of women coming in after the new year to talk about their experience with Grant. What would your message to them be?
Keep going in terms of bringing that message together. And I'm sure they know more. They know more of more folks, because
I think some of them was really moved by him, actually.
And that's unfortunate, and that's something that we hear a lot of. But a personality like that, he wins people over to gain their trust. And if you're not paying attention, if there's perhaps you even have a need of him, because there are some folks, they need perhaps information, they need guidance. He has insight, he has connections that he can leverage. And then the minute you question him, the minute something does not, your flags are raised and you question him or you push back, it's going to be a problem. And that's when you fall to the other side and become a victim.
That's what we don't want. And that's another reason I want to have you on, so that we can warn people. People need to be warned. Like, people were starting to trivialize who this guy is. It's like, no, he is. I know he looks funny and wacky, and
if that's all he was, that would be great. But that's not who he is. That's not all he is. And there are people who are victims of his actions, and he leverages the viewership, he leverages the audience of those who don't know. And I'm happy to hear that there are new people who aren't aware, who are able to hear me talk about my experience, and to know that where you hear me talking, there are numerous other people who have their own experiences in terms of their interaction with Grant and what he's done to them. And so I'm happy to hear that you're going to have some of these women on here to talk about that. There are men, there are other people who have been victim of Grant's lies, his deception, and his abuse of his network.
Yeah, someone. It's funny because a couple good comments. Lisa Peralt just made a great comment. She said this is the tip of the iceberg, and then Sue just said Bettero has spoken out to the character of Wendy Murphy, and it's not good. Bettero is our biggest star. He is the biggest thing that's been on the show ever in this last year by far, and that's how he became a character on the show. And even in the Aiden Carney defense is because of Wendy Murphy, Grant's mother. So both of them have, been exposed by more very credible people in the last year. It's just when you put them under the magnifying glass, when you look at the Duke lacrosse, and there's just so much here. And I know that we're at least going to do this show and another show. There could be many more shows. And that's the thing. We're open to anyone who wants to speak on this type of subject matter about Grant Smith Ellis, the harm, and warning people. So we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be 3-4 shows, right?
Yeah, whatever it takes. And again,
exactly.
I appreciate the audience member mentioning Wendy Murphy, because I don't think I actually said her name, who is Grant's mother, and she's the one who not only is a graduate of New England Law, she is still a professor at New England Law, so her ties to the school are very strong. And again, when you have someone like that who is tied to an organization, that organization needs to hold her accountable. They need to hold their students accountable. And if anyone is leveraging their name, the name of New England Law, to push these personal attacks, which goes against everything that the American Bar Association, the Legal Institute, the oath of office that these people have taken goes against all of that. They absolutely have a duty to check them, to say, hey, look, this is not acceptable.
I love our chat. They know all about Betero. They all know all about Duke Lacrosse. They all know all about Wendy. They know about Grant. And they're learning much more about his cannabis shenanigans, which that's what we're going to do. We're going to do all of it. We're going to do Free Karen Reed stuff and, his whole life. We're going to just go. We'll just do it. With what's most important, not like the Mike versus Grant beef. It's the victims, the people who have suffered, like your family. That's Cynthia. I just wish the best for you. I just really hope. I saw some donations came in already tonight. People have been donating. It's in the link. People want to support. Please, pinned at the top of the chat. If you watch it on the replay, I'm also going to post the same link there. So look for it. It will be pinned both in the comment section on the replay or in the super chat live thing. What do we call this? The chat right now. Thank you. And our chat is awesome tonight. I love it. Yeah. I'm feeling better. Could you tell I was a little stressed earlier, Cynthia?
Just a little bit, Mike. I actually was concerned because I haven't had a chance to watch your show lately, and I was just, wait, why are you stressed, Mike? You're the one. But I think you made a point. Here it is. We're talking about a common situation that we share in terms of being victims. So having to facilitate a conversation where I'm sure you have your own anecdotes that you could add even further in terms of what are the things that I've shared, because along the years that we have been impacted, both online and then physically and moving forward, you have been there. You had your show, you've had your platform, you've been an integral part of the cannabis industry. So this is something that you are aware of. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I suffered just for daring to not go along with what he was doing. My big breaking point was Chauncey. I know you and Chauncey, I think, or Maur and Chauncey maybe didn't get along so well, but I saw him do some stuff to him. And then I started realizing, holy shit, like what this guy's like, I couldn't believe it. I was conned. I was just total.
And that's
like a wake up call.
That should speak up. Chauncey should speak up because he actually.
I know. I feel so bad for Chauncey.
The misinformation or that Grant has put on Chauncey. I have no problem saying that Grant is the one. He has put that blame on Chauncey because when this industry was opening up, he was in the news a lot. The Boston Globe and the folks that perhaps in Grant's network again, were going to him, and Chauncey acquiesced to Grant as the person to whom he goes to understand the legislation. And so when again looking at the history of what we have endured, there are a lot of folks who have watched and they know the role that they've played in terms of enabling Grant. And they have a responsibility to speak out, whether or not they do it publicly or directly to him or in other ways, that's their business. However, I have no qualms in saying that everyone has a responsibility to hold him accountable because there's a role that they each played in validating him. And it's that validation that became dangerous because if there was no validity, if he didn't have a press pass to say that he was a journalist when he has not he does not subscribe to the same standards as journalists do. If he did not have the network of people to say that, oh yes, we can vouch for him, or his mother even, the same concerns that we have for him, it sounds as though these are concerns that people who are in his mother's network also have. And perhaps these folks need to speak up a little bit more and talk to those who hold each other accountable to make sure that happens, because we should not be experiencing this in 2024 going into 2025. Not at all.
I know. This is what it's about. Is there anything else that you didn't get the chance to talk about that you want to talk about tonight?
I think we covered quite a bit. I started out with just kind of giving a highlight as to where we are now. And, I think some folks perhaps aren't part of the cannabis industry that are listening to you. Our family came into this looking for a business opportunity. And as I shared my background, as an advocate, as an educator, as a policy creator, and with that experience, brought that into the space, and unfortunately was attacked for, I guess, whistleblowing, if you will, is the word, what happened. And those folks those folks are actually still tied to this as well. The Colorado Six, they've come up, their names have come up. They're in the paperwork with the court documents, not by our introduction, but through the witnesses, through them advocating on behalf of the witnesses. So I think perhaps one of the messages is to let folks know that these folks, both Grant and the Jean-Jacques brothers, they're still being supported by a lot of folks in the industry. And so the responsibility is on you, on us collectively as a community, but on you as individuals in your specific networks and spaces to say, hey, wait, are you still supporting this?
And their nonprofit is called the Big Hope Project. Basically what they do is they go around to the dispensaries and shake them down, right?
You said it, I didn't.
I mean, that's what it feels like to me. I say if it walks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
When
and they got money from. Let me say this too. They got money from Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. She wrote them a check and did a photo op with these guys.
They also received money. They are actually in the Senate budget. They are a line item in the Senate budget. Jeez. And I will say to your comment about if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, must be a duck. There are people out there in this industry who, if you go and speak to them, they will tell you, yes, that is what's happened to them. However,
I'm glad you said that. Back me up, because that's where it came from. Like when I say stuff like this too, for my audience, especially the new part of the audience, generally it's because I've heard it from other people that are in the know, and that's why. That's what they tell me. That's what, and I talk. You know me. How many do you think industry business owners I've interviewed? That's what they say. That's exactly what they say. So thank you, Cynthia. You are so good at this. You have saved me tonight. I'm so, I know you're going through trauma, but I want you to have the best Christmas. This is what you did tonight. You're amazing. You're an amazing woman, and I've watched you for a while, and I'm so happy we finally got to do this. I know it's not ideal way to do it, but thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. I thank you for your kind words. And again, I also thank you for speaking up, because I know, as you shared and as I've seen, that the attacks will come. Perhaps they won't come directly. Perhaps it'll be someone else, something that has to do with your dog folks, because that's how Grant moves. He will try to find out who is in your network, who's in your, if he knows where you work, he will try to go that route. And it's really on the community to say, hey, where are your receipts to back what you're saying? Please explain clearly to support this, right? Because it's not right that victims are silenced. And then we turn around and say, we want victims to speak up. Well, if the victims speak up, then we have to give them an opportunity to be heard. And Grant has not shown any receipts. He has not substantiated anything. Hold him accountable. That's the ask. Hold him accountable.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a great Christmas, and
Likewise, have a wonderful holiday rest of the year. Happy New Year. I share that sentiment also to your audience. Thank you to them as well for chiming in, for checking in. I'm not able to see the chats, but if there's anything that perhaps there was clarity I can give, I'm happy to do that afterwards. And thank you also for sharing the spotfund.com
Yes.
link.
Yes.
Um, I struggle there because someone actually they assisted us, and I appreciate her. There are advocates, there are silent angels out there who are helping, and those are greatly appreciated. Shout out to those people, not just who are helping our family, but who are also providing support to other people who are facing similar challenges because of this.
Absolutely. And again, if people can donate, please consider giving some money to that spot fund for this. This would be very helpful.
We'll be back to speak up some more, provide additional information. I think there are different contexts that we can really shed light on what's happening. There's only so much that folks can digest in one time session. And, I again appreciate the time that we had together this evening, Mike.
Thank you, Cynthia. Definitely, we will chat in the future. And again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. Man, that was so good. Thank you, Cynthia. Oh, she's getting added to the list. We got a list here. These are the nominees. I got to explain something. She just got added to this is it. I am so old school, pen and paper. This is the best guest award for 2024 on the Young Jerks. We're gonna have an award show, our next show, and you're gonna be part of it. And the way that we're doing this, the rules of this is we're gonna actually do two shows. We're gonna do one show for the public with phone calls, and we're gonna do a second. We're gonna do our first members show ever. So if you're not a member and you want to make sure you're part of that, you'll have better odds of getting through the phones, but you can get through the phones anyways most times. But what this is we're going to have a poll and see who you think was the best guest of 2024. And, basically you can vote for as many as you want. Like the rules on this is the callers get to vote. Our moderators get to vote. Mike Crawford gets to vote. And some of our guests, if we get them up on the StreamYard, we'll get some votes too. So anyone on the show that night basically gets to vote. And you can vote for one person or you can vote for as many as you want. And so my list is extensive. This is the master list. And as we take votes, the tally, this will be the running tally from your calls, from our mods. We already have one moderator vote so far too. The list is extensive. I think we all know who's going to win. We have our clear favorite, obviously, Attorney Mark Betterow. I think that's no surprise. But it's going to be interesting to see who's second, third, fourth, fifth. This is going to be exciting. It's going to be decided by you. And I love some of the names on the list. I got so many. Rita Lombardi, Nurse Kim, Melanie Little, Sean I said the Sean name, didn't I? He was a great guest. He really was a great Turtle Boy. Mazza, Betterow, Nick Rocco, Las Vegas Cops, Todd McGee, Dejuna Perkins, Jessica Machado, John Como, Jennifer O'Donnell, Rich the Duck King Schiffer, The Glera, Auntie Deb, JFK, James Jackson, Mizzy, Robert D'Amico, former FBI agent, Mass State Rep Nick Boltega, Kathleen Howley, Tim Bradle, Bianca MMM, Andrea Burkhart, Shannon McMahon, and Cynthia. I'm sure there's some I'm missing. That's where you guys are going to come in. Who's going to be number one? I'm looking forward to it because we had amazing guests this year. This show is about this community. You guys are going to decide it. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this next year. I really am. And I'm excited to continue to fight for Karen Reed, to fight for Turtle Boy and raise money for Maur tonight, the Defense Fund. Please, if you can, kick in. I'm going to be making donations this Christmas definitely to Turtle Boy Defense Fund, Karen Reed Defense Fund, and the Maur Defense Fund. Though that's what I'm doing probably tonight, hopefully, if I have enough time. If not by Christmas. I hope everyone for the best Christmas, the best holiday. And let's just keep our mind on what's important. Supporting the victims of this shit, you know? All of us. That's what we start. That's what brought us all together. All these crazy people, good people. That's what brought us all together. Oh, I love this. I just donated to her. Thank you so much. You donated. Thank you, Sheila. I love you. I love please support Maur. Just you've seen the videos. If you haven't, it's obvious what's going on here. She was so good tonight, Cynthia. I don't even want to check my phone, the super chats. I'm sorry, or the Venmos or Cash Apps, if there were any tonight. I'll read those off another time. If you did do that, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, Maz Media. I want to say thank you to Bedero, obviously, especially Aiden, Turtle Boy, and Meredith. And I loved what do we call that? This Twitter space today with Auntie Deb and Jen Altman. I'm thankful for a lot. And we also, in my family, some good stuff's happening right now too. So I'm kind of on it's been a weird ride lately. I go from being way up and way down, just because of everything, right? So I'm glad we did this show. I'll see you after Christmas. Again, we're going to do this thing. We're going to decide who was the best guest of 2024. As Bedero says, we think we know who's going to win, but that's why we still play the games to find out, right? Something like that. I probably screwed it up, but he has said something similar to that. I gotta get it down. You know what I think I need Auntie Deb to see if he does a Bedero impression. I bet he could do one. All right, I'm out of here. I will see you after Christmas, hopefully. Have a great Christmas, everyone. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you then. And thank you for all the super chats. I don't even know if I got them all up. I guess I should go through them. Katie, thank you so much for becoming a new YouTube member. Thank you, Sherry D. She's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, these guys are lawyers. Making Law Simple. Thank you so much. Thank you for the donation. Super chat tonight. These guys are jokers. They're serious jokers. That's lawyers. Lawyers. I love them, though. Brandon, thank you so much. How much do I pay in taxes? Or I'm not sure who this question was to. Maybe it's to Grant. I don't know. I don't know who this. I'm going to pay too much. I'm going to pay probably as much as I did in 2008 when I made a lot of money. My shit's been moving up. Everything for a while now. But that's the thing that sucks. I think a lot of people's incomes have moved up, but it's just the cost of living has moved up. So you really, right? But the taxes still, BLT gifted 10 Young Jerks memberships. Thank you so much. That's awesome. We got new members, so it's it's going to be fun. You get to be part of the first Young Jerks membership. We're finally doing one. I love this. Sarah did 20 more too. Awesome. I thank you so much. Again, Merry Christmas. We'll see you after Christmas. Have a great night.